If you are interested in acquiring any of my Overkills tutorial guides from Microsoft Flight Simulator, or simply interested in supporting the channel, please consider joining us on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides, as well as any future releases that come down the road. Patreon link can be found in the description below. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to be talking about two different things here. First off, we're going to be talking about the Longitude guide that has finally been updated and released. We're going to be talking about a couple of points within the guide that have changed, as well as a few things that are yet to come. They're just minor things, but I did want you guys to be aware of it. So we're going to go through the guide, certain parts of it, show you guys the parts that I left in for a reason, as well as a couple of things that I took out and a couple of things that aren't there quite yet. And then the first thing that we're actually going to be talking about is the delays and the things that have happened in Patreon over the last couple months. Some things that happened in the lifestyle that really impacted a lot of things, and what I've done to rectify that. I feel like I owe you guys, my Patreon subscribers, a huge explanation for that. I know I've posted a few things on Patreon, but I also want to have a conversation with you guys face to face, if you will. Now, if you guys are not interested in anything as far as Patreon, what has happened, what is happening, and what is going to be expected moving forward, there is a timestamp down below that will take you guys to just the explanation of the Longitude update and what you guys can expect from that guide. So again, that timestamp will be down below if you guys want to skip over my boring story and what Patreon is going to be looking like moving forward. Then again, you guys can skip ahead to that. It'll be in the description, and you guys can just go straight to the Longitude guide changes and what to expect from the guide. So let's go ahead and get started on what has happened. So as you guys know, I promised the Longitude guide back in August. Is when I initially announced. It was about the middle of August that I announced that the guide was going to be released. And all kinds of things happened after that. So first we're going to be talking about what I sort of did to myself and that I will never be doing again. But you guys, again, deserve that explanation. So at the same time that I've been working on, I know it sort of looks like that Patreon has sort of been put on the back burner, and that couldn't be further from the truth. If what essentially happened with Patreon specifically, as far as the guides go, is I bit off way more than I could chew. Give you guys some background here. I am a father of three, a husband. I have a full-time job doing IT, professional services is what it is. Essentially, enterprise level corporations will pay my company to basically do work for them, right? Upgrades, software upgrades, things like that, environmental changes that they contract my company through. And then on top of that, both Patreon and YouTube, I don't want to use the word obligation, because they're definitely, an obligation is obviously something that we don't want to do, but we're forced to. I absolutely do want to do it. I want to reach a point where I can do it full time, where I can become just a content creator. Unfortunately, I'm not there yet. But YouTube and Patreon both are a requirement for me and my family right now in the financial aspect. They are a must. So I want to stress to you guys that I do not take you guys for granted. I do not take YouTube for granted. I don't take Patreon for granted. Things just got really, really overwhelming, and we're going to get to that. As far as biting off more than I could chew, I have been working on the Longitude guide for quite a while. First, it was the AAU1 update. Was starting to work on that. Then AAU2 came along and changed a whole bunch more. Ran into a bunch of bugs, ran into a bunch of issues that were really preventing me from completing the guide in an effective way, because I didn't know what was coming. I didn't know what was going to change. So that was the first delay. Now, back in August, that doesn't count. And then on top of that, I have also been working on an update to the Flybywire A320. I had the ATR guide that I just released at the beginning of August. So I was working at that at the same time. The TBM 930 guide is also about to be released. I'm hoping by Monday or Tuesday at the latest. And we're going to talk about why I know it's going to be those 2 days. And then there is another aircraft that I cannot tell you guys about. I'm under NDA, but that I'm actively working on a guide for, so that way it is available upon the release of the aircraft. I can tell you guys that if you've been watching the news for Microsoft Flight Simulator, if you enjoy the TBM 930, this is an aircraft you will definitely enjoy, and I'm sure that you could probably already think about what it is. Please do not comment in the video or anywhere down below on what you think it is. If you know, you know. If not, you'll find out. But again, if you enjoy the TBM 930, this is an aircraft you'll really like. And you could, like I said, you could probably put it together what it might be. But I've had access to that for quite some time now, and been able to be a part of the testing process, as well as been working on the guide at the same time. And so Patreon became very overwhelming, and I did that to myself. And the Cura, I never say it right, the 787. I've been adjusting the 787 guide to work with the Cura mod because it became so popular. So I tried to do all these things with Patreon all at once, and that was my mistake. That was too much. And so I couldn't get any one thing out in a reasonable amount of time. So that will never happen again. I have drawn out a new schedule for myself as far as Patreon goes. I can promise you guys that moving forward, there will always be at least one new guide or a updated guides every single month that you continue to support me on Patreon. Those guides will be, the current guides will either be updated or a new one will come out. As far as new guides that are coming, there is the aircraft that I cannot tell you about. That is my first priority. And it is imminent. Okay. It's right around the corner that the release will happen. So it should be, I would imagine, this month. If knock on wood, could be later, but we'll find out. And then after that, there has been a lot of requests for the Kodiak. So I have decided to shift gears and work on the Kodiak next. It is still a very popular aircraft, so we're going to jump all over that one. I've already got chapter 1 done of it. Again, been juggling a lot of different aircraft, so it will be my next primary focus. And then in the middle of August, as far as the delay goes, there was a lot of things. It was like somebody opened Pandora's box on the family. And I don't just mean the family under this roof. I mean my entire family. It was just one thing after another. And one thing after another. My sisters, my parents, there's been a lot of, unfortunately, very unfun things that have happened that have taken a lot of time and a lot of energy to get through. So I do apologize to you guys. And then on top of that, my work also kicked into high gear over the last couple weeks. And so my nights were taken more often than not, unfortunately. And so it became really hard to juggle everything. And it became hard and overwhelming because I had made deadlines and guarantees that I couldn't meet. And so that wasn't ever something I take lightly. It beats the hell out of me. It makes me feel guilty. And so I do apologize to you guys. And again, I have taken steps and drawn myself out a new calendar schedule that I'm going to stick to very vigorously. And I'm not going to try to take on too much anymore. I want this to always be fun. I started this as a fun project. I actually enjoy making the guides. It's a lot of fun for me. It's because at the same time token that I'm making the guides, I'm learning. And I'm learning on a very in-depth level with a lot of this stuff. And it's a lot of fun shifting it around. So without drawing the sad sob story out too much, again, I really don't like talking about my personal life on social media, especially when it's in the negative, because I don't want you guys seeing me in that kind of light. But I felt like I owed this to Patreon subscribers and people who were had expectations that were set by me with these guides. And I don't want to lose your support. I want you guys to continue supporting my channel. I want you to continue supporting me on YouTube. It means a lot to me, and it makes a lot of things for my family possible. For the last few years, I have been the sole provider of this household. It's a family of 5. I've got my daughter going through college, and my wife's just wrapping up med school that we've been putting her through. So it's been a ride. It's been tough. So without you guys, none of it would have happened. And I don't ever want you guys to think that I took that for granted, and I don't ever want my production to suffer at your expense ever again. So again, some things have changed. New schedules are coming. I've laid out a new way of dealing with things where this shouldn't ever happen again. As far as some of the comments that were made on various YouTube videos, like why are you cranking out so many YouTube videos when we're still promised a longitude guide? I want you guys to know right off the bat, I don't take any offense to those comments. I totally understand. You guys didn't have all the information I had. YouTube and Patreon, again, are both a requirement for my life right now. They really are. I have to maintain both. And I'm sorry that Patreon was the one that took the suffer. Yeah. Anyway, I apologize to you guys. I hope that for those of you who see this and were Patreon subscribers will consider returning and continuing to support me. And I hope that those of you who are current subscribers know how much I appreciate you and continue to support me. I promise the content will go back to what it was when we started. It will be rapid content. It will be consistent content each month. And we'll keep the guides moving forward and keep expanding, especially as Microsoft 2024 is coming on the horizon. Things are going to continue to be adjusted. While I'm on that topic, if you guys have any suggestions for guides, even if they are outside of aircraft, please let me know. Maybe it's like pattern work or something like that. These are all things that I would love to see to keep the content going. If you guys want Patreon specific content that are videos, let me know what those would look like. Make suggestions by all means. Message me on Patreon, message me on Discord, wherever it may be, and we'll definitely dive into that. Okay, so now that we've got that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the new guide. Here it is, the new Cessna Citation Longitude Guide version 2.1. We made quite a few different changes here. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire guide. For those of you who are unaware of these guides, I have multiple guides from multiple aircraft. I should say multiple aircraft guides. And they all walk through the same things. It's always a cold and dark startup at a destination. Walks you through creating the flight plans, starting up the aircraft, gives you a cockpit tour, points out where things are, and takes you all the way to a cold and dark shutdown at your destination. Everything that you need to complete any of these guides exists within the guides. Flight plan information, things like that. Now, the one caveat you guys do want to be aware of if this is the first time viewing these is that if you're interested in any of these guides, it is best to disable live weather unless you feel very comfortable in changing your designated runways and things like that to work with the guide. Now, you can create your own flight plans. That's totally fine. And the guide should still walk you through, for the most part, everything that you need to do. But if you disable live weather and you set up the environment exactly as shown in the guide, then everything that you need is in the guide. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. So that brings us to a couple of our changes here. Pretty much all new screenshots. But again, here's what I was talking about. All the information you need is in the guides. We do walk through now. I've moved the loading the aircraft to the very beginning. And then going through the initial electrical startup and the startup of the APU. Again, bunch of new screenshots. There's a few that were able to be maintained, but for the most part, they've all been changed to the updated aircraft, given the AAU2. Speaking of the AAU2 stuff and AAU1, let's talk about the weather radar first. Weather radar, this is going to be one of those sections where one part of it is missing, and that is the Connect radar. I thought I had a screenshot of that. Nope, just weather radar. So the Connect radar, I still need to do some more research on and get an idea of exactly how it works and what it does and what the difference is between the weather radar. I know the weather radar is obviously on board, and I believe the Connect uses a data link if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not positive on that. So I want to dive a bit deeper into that, verify how it works, what the benefits are in comparison to just using the onboard weather radar, if I'm even right now that's working. So the Connect radar right now is removed. It's not in the guide. We're only working with the actual weather radar that it does currently exist on the aircraft. Going through 5.4 here, you guys have all of the new aircraft systems and synoptics and everything that breaks down exactly what all of these different pages are and how to use them, and as well as how to customize the aircraft to your liking. Bunch of really cool information that we were able to add now that didn't used to exist. Manual user waypoint creation is now in there. However, this is another one that I wanted to point out. I only did latitude and longitude for now, and the reason being is this page here where I break down how to create your own waypoint using SkyVector. SkyVector is a very, very easy way to do this, and it already gives you the latitude and longitude coordinates. So that's why I added that one in the guide. If you want to do radial and distance, I will be adding those later on. But for right now, latitude and longitude is the only thing I have in there. The next step that I want to walk through, we've changed the Navigraph subscription, walked you through those steps. Now, something that I am noticing, and I hope that you guys don't, but every single time I start the aircraft, I have to reconfigure the Navigraph. It doesn't seem to be persistent anymore, and it used to. So I don't know if that's a bug or an issue with my version. I am on the Microsoft Flight Simulator beta, so maybe that's something that's only impacting me, but I want you guys to be aware of that. Moving down, so here's where we're talking about all the departure and arrival information. Pretty much all of that has stayed the same. There's a few others that I have changed, added a few new screenshots, removed a few lines that are no longer required. This part here, as far as the performance information, I left the manual steps in with all the charts and stuff like this. This is all from real world POH. I don't have access to the real world POH. I was given certain things by somebody that I can't mention, but I was provided with this information long ago. So I did want to show you guys that. And it may be available now. I don't know. So it walks through how to manually basically set your V speeds and how to set your trim. So why don't you guys see that? And then we walk through the G5000 features of how to do it with the computer, getting to your V speeds. Okay. And it's pretty darn close. The V speed variance between manual and the automatic is anywhere from 2 to 3 knots. Nothing game breaking, right? It's pretty cool. Okay, so we got the new engine start sequence, got all that updated, had to remove a few things there. VNav, this is where I wanted to really address with you guys. So with VNav, in the old days, for those of you who may not have been flying the aircraft during that time frame, when Working Title first made their adjustments to the G3000, 5000 suites, they did VNav calculations, which would calculate where your top of descent location was, and then give you a glide path and all the indicators up on the PFD, but you had to use vertical speed to navigate your way down through it. You don't have to do that anymore, but I left it in there. And you had to add all of your own altitude targets as shown here in this image. You used to have to click each one of these waypoints, add the altitude target, then enable your VNav, and you would get your top of descent once you were up at cruise. You don't have to do that anymore. Since the AAU1 and AAU2 updates, just like with the big tube jets, all of your navigation information is pulled directly from Navigraph charts or the in-game data, so you have all of your altitude restrictions pre-populated. But I left all of these steps in. I've given you guys a couple of highlighted sections here just to make sure that it was very clear that these steps no longer have to be completed. However, if you follow these steps, you can use them to edit any of these altitude restrictions. So I wanted to show you guys that. Okay, so we walk through all the steps. Again, this is just demonstrating essentially at this point how you would edit these if you wanted to, and how the corresponding altitudes or precursing altitudes would change based on a change to your target. Okay, but we didn't have to do any of that. Once we got to cruise, we just enable VNav. It knows where we are. And then I also left in case you wanted to still fly vertical speed. That's still something that you can do. And I have done this on plenty of occasions. And the reason being is when you're on cruise and descent, like once you set your altitude, it can get boring. You know, the one thing that I liked about the initial release of the Working Title G3000, 5000 suites was that you had to use the vertical speed, constantly making sure you were on your descent path and on your glide slope, and constantly keep adjusting your vertical speed based on that. And it gave you something to do on the descent. It was fun for me. You know, anytime I get to turn the knobs and stuff on all my flight stuff, I liked it. So I left these steps in here, but you guys will see here C11.5 for the actual VNav descent. So if we come down to 11.5, it actually walks you through exactly how you would do it the correct way, right? The way that they would actually do, using VNav itself and letting the aircraft descend. Same thing that we saw in the takeoff. I left in the manual steps to getting your approach and final reference speeds. And this one was actually really cool. This one worked out really nicely for me. So if you see here, you can see the approach speeds here at 128 knots. And then if we come down through the steps here, you guys can see here 128 and 116, just like we had up here. And I had not entered these into the computer. This is what the computer calculated, which means the chart was right on. Now, coming down to this page, I want to show you guys what I did also leave in here. Well, added essentially. Because I was using live weather while I was creating this guide, and I'm kind of glad I did, weather in Minneapolis had changed from when I took off and turned into a 20-knot tailwind. So my runway that I had set up at the beginning of the guide for runway 30 left, and this is why I tell you that if you choose to use the guide and live weather, make sure that you're comfortable with changing your approach runways, as that may be a variable that you're going to have to deal with as the guide doesn't know what the current weather is, right? But I decided to leave this section in here so that way you guys could see what you would see if the selected runway doesn't meet the parameters for the aircraft. So in this case, we have a tailwind of 20 knots, and the aircraft is only rated for a maximum of a 10 knot tailwind on landing. Therefore, the accept landing speeds is grayed out. So in this, I did state that I am adjusting the weather to continue the original flight plan. So I basically took live weather off and dropped it into the into manual and rechanged all the winds. Then brings us to the next page. Showed you guys how to manually enter in your wind and altimeter into the computer, so that way your V speeds could be calculated. And you can see they stayed the same because that's obviously based on weight and all that good jazz. So that was kind of cool that the chart actually matched what the guide had already stated. And then after testing, obviously the landing was perfect. I think it was wheels down at 114 knots. So that was pretty cool. So I did added that as well and left that in there, and then changed up a bunch of other screenshots and things like that. For the most part, there were a bunch of steps in here that actually all I had to do was remove, that were no longer necessary, as we were no longer using vertical speed to manage the descent. But walks through everything else on how to get it down to the ground, and obviously the shutdown process is unchanged at the time. So I really hope that you guys are looking forward to this guide. It is available. Become a Patreon subscriber if you guys want access to this guide as well as all of my other ones. Be sure to grab them all while you're there, even if you only want one. If you're there, you might as well have them all on board. I love you guys' feedback. Let me know if you have any problems with the guide. Again, as I stated earlier, there are a few more updates that I have planned for it already. Couple little things, nothing crazy. They'll be done this coming week here, and should be out by Friday. So anyways, as always, guys, I appreciate the support. I can't tell you guys enough how much I appreciate the support. It really means the world to me. You guys make so many things possible in my life, and sorry I dropped the ball this last month or two, and I can assure you that I have done things to rectify that situation. It won't happen again. So as always, guys, stay safe and healthy. See you in the next one.